Good morning, Fern. How are you doing?
I'm still trying to figure out your face right now.
Do I actually look younger?
You look 20 years younger, so you look like you're five.
I really look younger. I didn't know that. I mean, it
It's
looks
really odd, I'll be honest with you.
it looks
Now,
different to
like
me.
if you were walking around with Roz in public, I would be questioning Roz. I'd be like, listen, I think what you're doing here is illegal. This small boy that you have next to you, you're
People
using as a
question
sex
her.
slave.
People question her anyway. So the shaved face is no different. It was actually I was itching to do it, like literally pun intended. Like my face was itchy because my beard was just getting long and straggly, and then she finally was like, "Hey, you got to shave because you're just a mess," and I did
I've actually been contemplating growing a beard, which my beard looks as funny as you look without a beard.
it. You know, the intention was
I look like the guy from Team America, this is a good segue. You remember when he glued the hair to his face in Team America?
yes.
That's what my facial hair looks like. It's like
It
kind of
was.
like Joe Dirt slash Team America.
I think people forget your ethnicity, your background. Fernandez is a pretty big giveaway, but people forget it. And yeah, you
Yeah, but my dad grows a good beard, and for years, even to like a couple years ago, he's like, if you just shave more often, your facial hair will grow. And I'm like, I was in the Navy for like 17 years, dude. I had to shave every day. Like that doesn't work.
I know that's like one of those old fallacies, old wives' tales. Like I would get that. Like when I was younger, it was like don't shave because once you start, it starts growing in thicker. I remember that from my mom.
No, that's not how any of
Not
that works.
not true. Or else, my argument always used to be, well, then bald people would shave their heads
Exactly.
because it would grow back. So, considering you shaved your beard or your face every day for 17 years, yeah, why don't you have this, desire to rebel against it? Why do you continue to stay clean shaven? Because of that?
Probably because I grow a shitty beard. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. My
When I
goal
say
was
shitty beard, I'm not even that's an understatement. Meaning that I literally don't grow hair here. Like I can grow great mutton chops and a legit goatee, but nothing in between. It's just like Joe Dirt, just naturally. You mean your hair just grows in all white and trashy like that? Yeah, man, I guess. Yeah, like
well, my goal was, hey, I'm gonna shave and potentially by the time we're out of this lockdown, it'll be kind of back to the length I wanted. But then once I shave, I kind of like it. I can wash my face. I do lots of girly stuff. Like I do masks, I do scrubs,
none
I
of
do
that
lots.
shocks me one bit. Yeah, not
Well,
one bit.
I like it. One thing that I want to point out before we kick into our topic is if you check out our Instagram, we've been posting all of the social media clips from Dropping In. So when Dropping In officially launched earlier this year, we put up a lot of the clips, but now we're going back through while we have time, pulling out all the clips and re-airing the episodes on IGTV. So if you haven't seen all 10 episodes, which are officially out on YouTube, they're going to air once a week on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to check them out there, you can, but we're also putting all the social media clips out there.
Just go by Eastern. Nobody gives a shit about Mountain Time.
When do you think they decided to do like time zones?
I don't know, but I'd totally be cool if they did away with them.
So if
Or
they did
and
away
daylight
with them,
savings time.
that's a little bit easier to do because it's only a 1 hour impact. But if they got rid of time zones, who would be the leading time zone?
Wherever I'm at.
Just Fern time.
It would just shift as I moved around the world.
Right, because the challenge is like then we'd be in Australia or wherever, I don't know, somewhere exactly 12 hours apart. It's not Australia, but maybe like Asia, and it's
I mean, you have to have
nighttime
time
there.
zones because that's where that it goes by the sun basically. So yeah, I mean, time zones make sense. Daylight savings time is dumb though.
I don't follow much of anything, news, politics, etc. But time
Yeah, I would
zones, I
agree.
know
You're
they're
generally uninformed. I would agree.
I'm very informed about two insignificant topics, uh, CrossFit coaching and The Office. But where did daylight savings come from?
I don't know. I literally
Oh,
don't
so
know
you're
the
not
answer to
that,
that.
look at you, not that informed either.
I never said I was informed.
But you want to remove this whole thing. From what I understand, maybe I'm more informed than you, is it's a farmer thing. So they,
Very
you
well
know,
could be.
farmers want to have more time to, handle their crops and whatnot. And then, but I know it must be confusing. Hey, Roz, do you know where daylight savings came from? She's ignoring me like usual. So that was it.
That's why she and I get along.
That was she literally looked at me and just kept walking by. All
Stu-
right. Well,
it's a
the,
stupid question.
let's talk a little bit before we dive into front rack mobility, just on the state of affairs, especially for CrossFit Rife, because you can speak on that now. We've been at the forefront of this coronavirus. You and I really, fighting it, attacking it, doing everything we can, through our powers here at best hour of their day to handle this thing. Feel like no one else is doing what we're doing, but nevertheless, you kind of Virginia became under attack.
Yeah, we shut down, and I think currently, I try to have to control my anger when I talk about it. Currently, we have the longest shutdown that I'm aware of, which is
Yeah,
June
so
10th.
so Virginia basically went from open. You were one of the last states, and Roz and I talked a little bit about this. The problem was, and not necessarily Virginia, but we were talking about you, is that these states that kind of chilled out are now the ones that are getting hit, right? So
Well, not
is
really. I mean, we're getting cases, but it's not, I think, the total number of. So, and I do want to, I need to preface this because I feel like when I make these statements, people are just like, well, you don't care. Me stating any sort of statistic has no bearing on my compassion for people, right? I'm just stating that if there's a reaction, if I'm stating this, I feel like that it is either unduly weighted or overly weighted based on the actual event, right? So I do want to make that. I'm not. It's not that I don't care that people are dying. That's ridiculous. Like anybody who says that, like you're actually an asshole.
but you
Um,
texted me before the show. You were like, "Hey, just so you know, I don't care. People are dying."
that's definitely not what happened. Yeah, that was somebody else. I think in total, I think there's been about 250 deaths in Virginia. I think that's the most current number. I could be wrong by a couple, but I try to stay on top of it. But so yeah, June 10th is the current date, and I know that New York just had a dramatic drop off, as well as Italy and Spain both had a dramatic drop off, and I just don't know how long this can last. And I've even had some conversations with my lawyer about con like constitutional law with regard to the state, meaning,
you gonna be like the guy, like we're gonna see a movie one day,
I mean,
like
listen, I just don't like, to some extent I have I think it's worth at least having the discussion. Is it even legal for the state to shut people down? I understand they're doing it under the guise of public health. However, as we get closer, like if we get to the end of April and we're not seeing like something that really requires a complete state economic shutdown, every day I become more and more dependent on the federal and state government financially in order to reopen, then yeah, I'm having a real hard conversation with my lawyer about what constitutional law with regard to what does the Virginia Constitution say? Is it an actual law or is that their recommendation? Meaning there can't be and I know some lawyer is going to crap all over me for this, but I do know this, like it's not a law, like laws are passed by legislature. And while the governor does have executive power, not necessarily to make law is my understanding of that. So I just want to find out, like, what are the repercussions? Like, what are the actual legal repercussions if I were to reopen, and violate social distancing? Like, what am like, am I actually violating something?
so.
Or am I just going against, because people can go to the grocery store, they can go to the bank, they can go to the park and exercise, they can go to the beach. So that's just
I
me.
think that's relative to where you're living, right? I think Florida finally closed down their beaches. This is probably the most we've ever disagreed on a topic.
I mean, we disagree about a lot of stuff,
And not like
which
in
I
a
think
way
is
that it's
fine.
like we're fighting about. Not, I'm not suggesting like when I say most, I mean like actually on the
You're,
furthest end of the spectrums.
yeah, well, you're more risk averse than I am, just in general, like as a person. Like
Do you
you
think
just
so?
avoid, yeah, 100%, which is not bad, you know.
Well, I know we
I
have another friend, Todd, who we both think is, and he would admit he's been on the show numerous. He's highly risk adverse,
well, yeah, he's more
right?
risk averse than you.
Okay, so I was gonna say like
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
on the spectrum. Am I?
You're probably we're so like let's just say that like I'm not and it's not that I'm not risk averse. I'm just a little bit more calculated about taking risks. So like I'm not like I wouldn't describe myself as flippant about risk. Like it's not that I'm like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. So like let's just say farthest right is like you don't give a shit. I'm
Okay,
probably like center right. You're probably center left. And this has nothing to do with politics. Everybody calm down. And then Todd's
yeah,
like left.
right. I would say
Yeah.
because I like to think it depends on the topic, right? Like, hey, I've moved to two different states. I've opened different businesses, so I think it depends on and then, like anything, even politics, right? You
Mm,
could be far left or right on one topic, and then the
yeah.
complete opposite on another. Because yeah,
100%.
this is and in fairness to you and the listeners, I don't have skin in the game from a brick and mortar perspective right now,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think that changes a lot. So
It does change a lot, right? And I think that's just something I think everybody. And I was listening to a really good podcast with Mark Bell, and they had two. If you, everybody should go listen to both. They're both the interview with Dr. Batar and then the follow up interview.
yeah,
Um,
I saw his post, and he's getting
they're
heat.
really good. They took a lot of heat for the Batar episode, but
And by
the
the way,
doctor they
how
brought
cool
on
is that last name? Butter.
Batar Butter, yeah. And so go listen to it. It's a great episode. And I think the follow-on episode is important because the doctor that came on second was talking about analyzing where people are coming from, what their motives are, and the information that they present absent of emotion. It's understanding that somebody who chose not to shut down their gym isn't a bad person and is not socially um, irresponsible. They just may be in a different position where they need to keep their business open. They have a mortgage to pay and stuff like that. And the same thing where it's just like, if somebody mentions statistics and questions like, is this right? That doesn't mean that they don't care about people dying. That's not the case at all. I think it's awful. I think it's terrible. I don't want anybody to die. I think we should do everything humanly possible to protect them within reason. So,
So I have a couple
you know,
questions, and I hope we do get to our topic, but this is really interesting, and I think it needs to be heard because box owners are getting, a lot of backlash. And while most are voluntarily shutting down, I want to say most, to be fair, I don't know if that's true. I just know based on what the Morning Chalk put out, like 90% of US boxes are
90%.
closed, which
Yeah.
is like, where are the other 10%? I don't know. It must be a
Probably in
handful of
some rural
states.
areas or like there's not a ton going on in the center of the country to my knowledge. So, you know, but yeah,
So
anyway.
my question to you would be, one, if it's very hard to remove your emotion from this, but if you weren't relying on CrossFit Rife, and I know Jess is in the Navy, and I'm sure you have some sort of pension coming in. I don't know your entire finances. I know Best Hours like
I
printing
don't get
money
any money from the Navy. I
at
get
this.
nothing.
Okay, but your wife is
0.
still active
Mhm.
duty and all that, so it's not your only source of income. But if CrossFit Rife didn't need to help you at all, would you still feel the same way about staying open? And secondly, if you were allowed to stay open just completely, would you, and what would you be doing differently?
I probably would. None of my wanting to stay open had anything to do with like, like we need to make this money. Yeah, I want to service my clients. And I posted something the other day, and I'm going to stand by this, that if we look at, I think it had to do with I reposted the CrossFit video that they talked about with fitness as a hedge against sickness. They
Yeah.
posted like a mashup of pieces of Glassman's talks over the years. And what I put underneath that is that, fitness is the independent variable most commonly associated with surviving chronic disease or combating chronic disease or surviving catastrophic illness or injury. And that is the variable, right? Which is how well are people, are they in that state of super wellness or not? So none of this was me being irresponsible or callous. It was very calculated in the sense that we're just not seeing people who are healthy and young have any sort of, and I know people that have had coronavirus and gotten better, like numerous at this point. Okay. So for me, I would have stayed open. And I'm also, it's also worth noting that I'm tied into many doctors in the ER scene here in the Virginia area who are clients of mine, right? So for me, it was talking to them and saying, hey, when you think that that I need to shut down, I need you to let me know immediately. And they're like 100%. They're like, but right now, not really enough risk to justify that. Up until the day the state shut us down. So I wasn't just on this bandwagon of staying open forever. Like if it's appropriate to shut down, I think you should shut your doors. I just don't see it at this point. I still don't currently see it. Now, would I
So,
be
so
lying to you if would I be lying to you if I said there's outside variables like I have landlords who want money? For sure. I also don't like the fact that now I have to go to the federal government and get money that I didn't want to ask for, that I may or may not owe back. So, yeah, I take a lot of issue with it because it could create some unwanted repercussions for me down the road, which I feel a lot of people feel that way. And I've had numerous people who hit me up in DM and they're like, "Hey, thanks for voicing your opinion." And for the record, my opinion is not either or. Right? I'm not suggesting anybody open or close their gym. I'm saying you should be able to make that decision based on, information. So if you close your gym, I'm for you. If you kept your gym open, I'm for you, as long as it was educated and calculated. You shouldn't just keep it open because you're just like, nobody here is going to get sick. That's dumb. Um, so I think there's a lot of factors in there, and I think there's a lot of gym owners. Actually, I know there's a lot of gym owners who close their gym from feeling shamed socially, and that I don't think is appropriate.
any gym that did that has probably since then been forced to close. So I doubt they've stayed
Correct.
closed. Um,
Correct.
I got a lot of questions that I want to
Go ahead.
ask, and I think one thing people, I'm putting words in the mouth of our listeners, but we'd like to hear from you. Is something you enjoy about this show the fact that Fern and I are opinionated, but also I believe very open-minded. I think we're both very open-minded on just about anything in this world. Like there's not much that you and I don't have an opinion about that we would argue. Like we're just not those people, and I'm wondering, I think a lot of that does come from our coaching experience. You have to deal with
Hmm.
hundreds of different people, and if you're just an asshole, no one's going to want to be around you. You have to be willing to be like, hey, I don't care about your, anything, your sexual preference to this, to that. Like it truly doesn't matter to me, but
I don't care.
I can have my opinion on anything, but you're welcome to be you and whatever
So
you want.
so that there's an interesting dynamic or kind of dichotomy going on there, which is for me alarming. And I think why this is alarming to me should be clarified. I am the child of an immigrant from a communist country, right? So I'm fully aware, like not personally, but via my father's stories about what communism, socialism looks and feels like. So what I find alarming is when people started getting shouted down for just simply stating an opinion or a stance of some sort. And this is a lot of what Mark Bell and them talked about. Like I think there's a massive lack of ability to converse in society in general. Like doesn't even matter what the topic is. Like people just have lost the ability to converse from opposite ends of the spectrums politely, meaning like, hey, we can disagree, it's okay. Like I don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with me, and neither one of us should shame the other one for thinking differently, because we all come from different walks of life. We've all had different upbringings. We have different experiences with regard to money and sex and religion and race and all those things, and that's okay. Like our general lack of ability to listen, I think, is the problem. And I would agree with you that I've gotten better at that from coaching, because if you're going to attack every scenario head on, you're going to lose most of them.
Yeah, I mean, and I was thinking like where I became more open-minded, because even when I first started doing CrossFit, I've talked about it in the book Best Hour of Their Day, available on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, and also now available in Spanish. I've spoken about it,
I
in the
did not
fact
translate that for him, by the way.
I've said, like, when we first found CrossFit, it was like very much CrossFit's the only form of exercise, and you have to do paleo. And I've learned over the years that's not a smart way to be. And I do think part of it for me was being on seminar staff, of course, maturing and becoming an older, individual. But seminar staff, man, it's such a diverse group of people that if you're an asshole, you're not going to make it very long. And
It's also a diverse group of intelligent people. So if you can't defend a stance of some sort, or speak to it intelligently, you're going to get crushed, because these are, like, it's not about necessarily opinions, it's about an educated discussion. Just be like, okay, it's cool that you believe that. Now my question is, like, why do you believe that? Like, what, just so I can understand, not necessarily because I want to try to convince you of something one way or the other, but I kind of want to just bat these ideas around, because I'm not opposed to moving my stance. I'm not saying I'm going to bring it all the way over your side, but I'm also not at all going to suggest that I'm not going to move a little bit more center, or whatever direction that could be. If you have a compelling argument, like, if it makes sense, it makes sense. It doesn't matter what direction it goes in.
yeah, and I think for a lot of people, if you're listening and you're wondering if you are open-minded or you want to be more open-minded, I think back often about, like, what Coach Glassman said. And I know it's not his quote, but when people talk about fitness and wanting to change, he'll often say, well, how's that working for you? And I can tell you, in 2007, 2008, it wasn't working for me, being closed-minded and stubborn and arrogant. So, in what do you got, a servant over there getting you coffee?
I mean, the coffee that was just sitting literally in this
Yeah, but then
cup
you
holder right
handed it
here.
off to
Yeah,
somebody. Who'd you hand it off to?
there's a table right here.
Oh, there's a table. It looked to me
Yeah,
like you're handing it off, like, Cassidy, Jess,
yeah.
my coffee, piping
Listen, my
hot,
wife
please.
definitely does not wait on me. No, no.
So, it's just a matter of, like, how's that working for you? Well, it turns out being, like I said, stubborn and a jerk off isn't really good for you. So I want two, follow-up questions on what you're saying, because I like that. Fitness is basically the independent variable most commonly associated with your ability to combat chronic disease. That's that's what Coach Glassman, paraphrasing him. So two follow-ups would be, there are cases out there that appear to be attacking young, healthy people.
Hmm.
So what, and Coach Glassman will talk about that as well. There's outliers. There's
For
diseases that
sure.
happen. There's car accidents that happen where you could be the fittest person in the world, but this car accident is going to set you back. So
Right.
what's your opinion on that? And again, I'm not following it close enough, but I do see in my news feed here and there, this 20-year-old died, or this 40-year-old is much sicker than we expected.
So I don't have an opinion on it either way, because I don't think that's enough information. So you just telling me that a person's age and that they died is the same as you telling me your weight without any other metric. If you're like, I weigh 185 pounds. Well, what does that 185 look like? Are you 6'1"? Are you 5'2"? Do you have 10% body fat, or do you have 48% body fat? So I just think there's more information that's necessary. Without getting that information, we do know that it is definitely in the vast minority of young people that are getting it. And then the following question I have is, like, what does their actual health look like? Meaning, if we're talking about health in the sense that CrossFit defines it, what do their biometrics look like? What does their work capacity look like? Because while they might not look sick, they may have some underlying. I know of I think there was a young man here in Virginia Beach who I believe unfortunately passed away from coronavirus, who was not old, like, he was in his 20s, I believe, but he was morbidly obese. So, and I think who's that? I think Carnivore MD, who he gets a lot of shade on Instagram too. He's been banging this drum for weeks about the statistics with regard to insulin sensitivity and death rates in coronavirus. Like, it's incredibly high. For people that are diabetic or have some variant of chronic disease, are not fending well. Which, again, no shock. I don't think anybody's shocked by that. So,
So
I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other. It's just like, what information, like, what other information do you have for me other than their age? You know, were they diabetic? Were they morbidly obese? Were they hypertensive? Are they insulin sensitive or not? Like all these things, they matter.
yeah, no, I agree with that, and we don't know, and it's not as if doctors. I'm sure they are curious and they want more information. It's just they're not going to figure it out right now. So if the government didn't say, hey, businesses need to be shut down, you'd be open normal business hours currently.
Current state of effects here that we have in Virginia, yes.
So so talk me through that. Like in my mind, this is what goes on in my mind. I want to hear what you have to say. My mind
Mhm.
would be, all right, I'm in Fern's shoes. I'm going to open up. Someone every day is probably going to come in that has it. I don't think your members are assholes. I think if they knew they had it, they certainly would be avoiding public interaction and especially, a gym. But somebody's going to come in, maybe not every day, but all it takes is that one person who has no idea they have it to spread it to your entire members. So what's your
Mhm.
thought process behind that?
So I think this is where education helps. So I'm looking up some stuff here real quick. So, no, that's not the one
Because
I
I mean,
want.
I think ultimately, while you look that up, that's really what the government's at, right? Hey, 97% of people are going to get sick but survive,
Yeah.
or whatever that
So,
percentage is. A huge portion of those people are going to have
correct.
very minor symptoms, if any. But
So I
there's
think
a
you look at the data, right? And I think okay, what does my general population look like? They generally look like, and this is stuff you can just pull literally out of Wodify. They look like 25 to 35, predominantly female. I mean, like 55, 45%. And there are some people there that are in the healthcare field. Okay, so like, where are my high risk folks? Don't have a ton of the older folks. If I had some older folks, hey, I think you guys should stay home. I'll do anything I can to help you. Maybe I'll come to your house. Maybe we'll figure out something else, do some personal training. My folks that are doctors, firefighters, nurses who are going to be in constant contact with the likelihood of them contracting it, not necessarily dying from it if they fall in the young and healthy category, which they do, most of them, if I'm thinking about all the ones that I know, and I have about a dozen, then they could still spread it, right? So remove that and then practice social distancing where I can have a class of 15 people here where we can keep 6 to 10 feet away from each other, remove tactile cues, um,
but
and
let
and
me interrupt you for a
mitigate
second.
risk
Let
and
me
mitigate risk.
I don't doubt that it would mitigate risk, but in all honesty, if one person walks in, I don't put this on you, but I don't think any box can practice good enough social distancing that it wouldn't spread.
Well, it depends, right? If people are not coughing all over each other.
I just mean like I obviously I think the idea, and I think this is changing, but it's 6 feet, right?
If the idea is 100% mitigation, then the answer is absolutely no. I can't do
Right,
that anywhere. They
right.
can't even do it in the hospital setting. So the expectation that you could somehow do it everywhere else is ridiculous. Can I mitigate it as much as possible with increased washing of hands, wiping down equipment, cleaning everything on a daily basis, practicing social distancing, figure out who is at high risk and who is not, and then making educated decisions on that? I mean, that's no different than doing kind of like some sort of tactical logistical analysis about like what is the safest means of getting this from A to B while mitigating as much risk as possible. But that thing still has to get there, and the reality is like people still need to stay fit. Now, can they do it at home? For sure. um, and this is all before we have the conversation about like what is the risk reward of shutting down the economy. And based on the way things are going, the risk of shutting down the economy is in my personal opinion significantly greater than what we're currently seeing with regard to the coronavirus. And again, I can have that stance while simultaneously acknowledging that coronavirus is dangerous for a very specific population who basically fall in the sick and old bucket.
It is hard. It's a little hard to compare, right? It's hard to say the shutting of the economy down is harder or worse than what the coronavirus is currently doing
You can't
because we
monetize
shut it
death,
down,
right?
but we've
Yeah.
also shut it down, so it's hard. we'd have to go the opposite direction and be like, hey, let's not do nothing to anything and see how the economy reacted, right?
Well, yeah,
You'd have to
I
completely
was
flip
never
it.
suggesting, I was never suggesting all the way. I was never suggesting not doing anything, and I was never suggesting shutting down everything. My suggestion was something that lies in the middle.
So
Now,
what
how do you
I
do that?
right.
Socially? Well, it's challenging. I'm not even suggesting that that's easy to do. Um, but here's the reality. At the end of this, we're going to find out whether it was worth it or not. We're going to look at the total expenditure economically in amount spent and amount forfeited in the totality of the world, and we're going to look at lives lost. And that's not to say that somehow I can equate money to lives lost. Like, you cannot do that, and nor should anybody try to do that. But the reality is, like, people die every day, and I know that sounds very crass, and it's not to mitigate loss of life, but at what expense are we doing that? Right? Does it make sense to put the rest of the world at at risk? And when I say risk, like, there is risk for shutting down the economy. When unemployment jumps 6.5 million people in 1 week, you're going to be hard pressed to convince me that alcohol consumption, drug use, depression, and um,
Suicide.
uh, suicide, and what's the other one I'm looking for? Abuse isn't going to go up. It's absolutely going to go up. And
Well,
again,
yeah,
how do
that
we quantify that? Like, so there's all
you're
sorts of
taking
crazy stuff that
deaths
goes in there.
due to sickness, and really, I agree with what you're saying there. Like, that's something that is being overlooked, in my opinion. Like, mental illness, right? Anyone that suffers from that their job is what gives them value, or I mean, without, they're on the streets now, but there are definitely people that are losing their home and losing their place to stay. So I agree with that. What this Here's one first question. If you had it, if you were like, okay, I have it, would you still go in? Would you still coach?
No. Now,
Okay.
I'm also convinced that I had it in January, to be
I
honest with you.
am, dude, that's something I
I
don't,
never I never get sick. Now, I'll give everybody the chain of events before this all are Jess and I actually talked about this morning. Jess was in Norway for 2 weeks. I know you remember this. She was in
yep.
Norway. She traveled back through multiple countries to get back here. She got back, she was sick. Then both the kids got sick. Then I get sick. And just for the record, I never get sick. And when I say never, I've been sick since like the 8th grade. And this was like, I was sick. I was on a gig that I almost pulled off of. I was so sick, like staying up at night, sweating, all sorts of stuff. My daughter was in the hospital for 2 days with pneumonia. So, did we probably have that? I think so. We didn't get tested for it, but I think we did. Based on all of that, I'm like, she was outside of the country at this time, in the hospital, you know, or not in the hospital, in the airports and all that stuff, and probably brought it back. Because
Well, there,
coronavirus is not new. Like, it did just pop up. Like, it's not a new thing that was just developed or
well,
found.
they're
It's
saying
been
it.
around since like 1963.
Well, coronavirus are basically the catch-all for what, like common colds, right? This novel COVID-19 is the specific one that supposedly started in China at these wet markets. But I agree with you as well that I am convinced I had it in December. My buddy Andrew, like Andrew Charlesworth, was here. He was staying with me, and he had something, and I never got like the body chills or anything, but I had a respiratory thing for like 2 months after that.
Yeah, so did I. It was, and that's why I'm saying there's probably a ton of people. And I remember, at least in Virginia Beach, this just ran through everybody for 2 months. Starting like in late November until January when this started to come about. Like, all the kids at the gym were sick, and people at the gym were sick. I mean, everybody was sick. Everybody I knew was sick at that point. So I'm not really convinced that we weren't like super late to the game in identifying this, and not like in a bad way, meaning like, for most people, when I say most people, like 99%, it just manifests itself as like a severe cold or flu.
Well, I was thinking about it because I was like, okay, I was literally like brainstorming, like, okay, if I did have this, and like use you as an example, you worked a gig. Did everybody at that gig get it? So if it were this virus, wouldn't it have spread just as fast as they're claiming it does?
If it was in fact that infectious. Which again, we don't know. Like most of what we're dealing with is speculation, or it's not speculation. It's best guess based on data that is known currently, which is getting updated every single day. So people that are, like, all the models are wrong. Well, models are always wrong. Like that's why they're called models. You know, they're always like, now by what degree are they wrong is the question. Well, that's totally dependent on the data that goes into the model, which is why when you have a model like the ones that they're running, they're getting updated every single day. And if you watch I think the projected beds needed for ICU or respirators came down by like tens of thousands. They're like, oh yeah, we totally overshot that. And it's like, yeah, because we got more information. So, you know, I mean,
This is
at the end of the day, here's what I hope. I hope that like nobody dies and this all goes away as soon as humanly possible. That's what I hope for. I'm not hoping to like be right or any of that shit. Like, I don't care. I want to go back to normal life with as little risk as possible. And hopefully nobody that I know or myself gets it and has to deal with it. Like that's what I hope for. I'm not like trying to rub anybody the wrong way, but I got my life and you got your life. So let's all like be polite.
all right. So my last question on the subject at hand: what would it take for you to think shutting down the box is the right thing?
I think I would talk to some people that are way smarter than me, like some of the doctors that I work with. I'm like,
I
what are
can
you
talk to
currently?
you. You want? I can
I
talk to you
said way
anytime you
smarter. I mean, like
want.
intellectually, emotionally, everything. I would talk to them and say, what are you seeing? And if they're seeing something that is incredibly scary to them, which I have not seen or I have not heard from any of the medical professionals that I work with, meaning it is just on a whim killing healthy people, just like, meaning like younger people that are by what we would consider, like, if for instance, if either one of us got it and then just dropped dead 3 days later, I'm worried. Like, that's not good. And it's not to say that I'm not worried when a 95-year-old gets it and dies from it, but again, is that unreasonable? Is that outcome really shocking to anybody, that somebody who's elderly, who's already at high risk from dying from any infectious disease or a fall or anything like that, dies from getting what we now know is a pretty highly contagious virus that we don't have a vaccine for? No, it's not weird. It's tragic, but it's not weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to a smart thing to do at any point is just talk to someone that knows more than you about this.
Yeah, and
So
that's why I went to the doctors, and she was, and the doctor I spoke with, super smart. She's like, listen, if I start seeing things, and she's the head ER doctor. Like, she's the head honcho in this area. She's like, if I start seeing something that would suggest community spread that seems to be very alarming, then I'll let you know to close the gym. And I'm like, cool, thank you, I appreciate it. And I talked to her almost every day up to the point when we closed.
well, I think we've talked a lot about that. I think hopefully people are listening and just you're educating us, right? Even if you agree or disagree with Fern, you can't argue that he's coming from a place of at least critical thinking. But let's take it
And
to
by the way, like, if you transplanted me and put me somewhere else, I would probably have a different opinion.
you. Yeah,
Like, if I
because you're
was,
based out of Virginia Beach.
yeah, and if I was in New York, I'd be like, everybody should stay inside. We should shut this place down based on what I know about New York. I don't live there, obviously, but like, if that was the case and I was in New York or somewhere else or Seattle or one of those places, like, or New Orleans, yeah, I would have that opinion because that makes sense. But this idea that, like, what's appropriate for New Orleans or New York, places with incredibly high population where everybody lives on top of each other, really, really high instances of homelessness and poverty, where hygiene is not great for obvious reasons, that makes sense. But if you live in rural Missouri, where your next closest neighbor is 10 miles away and you own a tackle and feed shop, I don't know that it's necessary for you to shut down your business.
So, but let's bring it to the business. What are some things CrossFit Rife is doing now? We've had a few episodes on this. We've had JP on ranting to make sure you still
By the way,
take
we're
care of
definitely
your.
not calling this episode front rack position. We'll have to cover that
Yeah,
in a later
we'll have
date. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
postponed. So, what
So
is
what are we
CrossFit
doing
Rife
now?
doing? Yeah.
So we are running virtual classes. We talked about that with Cassidy in a previous episode, but we currently have shifted towards like we're going to be doing online services. So I'm almost done building it out, but we're going to be moving towards essentially what is the extent of like online personalized coaching. So each coach is going to get a pool of athletes. That coach will be responsible for those athletes with regard to checking in on a weekly basis, getting them on a nutrition plan, and discussing any issues they have with regard to their training protocol for that week. What equipment do they have? How should they modify things? How can they improve their movement? And we're going to ride that. And now, when we built this out, these will be offerings that will be available because they're going to cost a lot more when we come out of this. But right now, what we're doing is we're offering increased value and service at no additional cost to our members. And then when we come out of this, then that will now be a new pillar of the business. Now, and I'm not trying to, and this is where I go back to kind of, I really appreciated JP's view on this. I'm not shifting
Rant.
my business. Yeah. I'm not, it was a view. It was a great rant. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I would have been a better person to interview him than you, but
He
um,
just went off, and I
I
let
loved
him
it.
go.
I thought it was great. And I thought he was spot on a lot of things, but I'm not looking to shift my business towards virtual, right? Like what we excel at is in person here on the floor. I'm not trying to abandon that. I'm trying to make this potential loss into a win, like make it a net positive. So there's a lot of things we're revamping. Like I'm getting off this phone call and I'm getting on a phone call about like revamping the website and how we do all of that and our new client intake process. So I'm using all of this time to address two things. What can I change immediately that needs to be fixed that I would not otherwise have downtime to do? And then what do I want to change? What do I want my business to look like in the future that probably would have taken me 6 to 12 months, but I could probably get up and running, not necessarily perfect, but good enough and workable in the next 45 to 60 days.
Yeah, I mean, because you have almost 90 days, really.
That's if it holds. It's going to end up if from the day they turned it off, if they actually go to June 10th, it'll be like 75 days, which is completely insane, but whatever.
So are you finding that these new, protocols and systems that you're putting into place, your members are enjoying them already? Are they commenting
Well,
on it? Are they?
they're enjoying a lot of it, but we're going to launch it this week. So I think every gym owner knows this. Like virtual classes are good for a couple weeks, and then at some point, like people are not going to continue to for a service that they don't get. Now, so some gym owners are probably getting this one. Be like, hey, I haven't been able to come into the gym and use the space. So here's where you need to have a little bit of a mindset shift. People do not come into your facility to use the space. They come in for a service. You can still provide that service absent of the space. Now, I will tell you it's a lot more work, right? Because I typically have 10, 15, 20 people on the floor here, and I can provide that service to all of them in a group setting. This is now a one-on-one setting. So you have to divide and conquer there, but I can still provide the service, and to some extent, probably in a more individualized basis than you were doing it before. So figure out how to provide that service. And here's what I'm here to tell everybody. It is not via running group virtual classes. That's a short-term Band-Aid. That is not the answer to your current problem.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? JP just kind of went off and said, take care of your box and don't push everything to online. What are some of maybe what are two or three things a box owner? I felt like that was the one area JP could have added more value. Like,
So a couple like one-off items. So first thing we've been over the past week, I think we've gotten at least 50% of the gym handwritten notes to literally everybody who kept their membership on. So I
and
probably
now is
dropped,
that something you're going to do consistently?
I mean, it depends on how long we go, but there's other things I'm going to do in there. So I just got a free case of O2 from those guys, and I'm probably going to deliver those along with T-shirts that were pre-ordered that need to be dropped off to those people sometime in the next week. So I'm going to get that interaction one way or the other, right? So
So
handwritten
you're
letters,
not only
thank
doing
you for your
handwritten
support.
letters, but you're meeting with some of these people. Well, the ones that ordered T-shirts.
And some of them I'm bringing them in. So if anybody hasn't followed CrossFit Rife to look at some of the videos that we've done with regard to like workouts and trying to get, produce some content that I'm going to use later, I'm trickling athletes in who want to get into the gym. I'm like, hey, who wants to do those 3 workouts this week? So if I can get 6 people in a week, or people want to come in and use the sauna or something like that, I'm giving them access. We're also going to be running workouts outside this week,
So so two things. I mean, those are kind of like newsworthy things. You're actually still letting people come in and work out.
not in a group setting. So like, we're not necessarily open for business, like we're creating content. So like, when I say
Oh,
letting
I see
people
what
come
you're
in,
saying.
I'm like 2 people, and I'm going
Yeah,
to shoot video of those 2 people. Like,
right,
we're
which is
creating content.
totally within the rules and laws, so don't anybody get worked up about it. But yeah, no, okay, so that's cool. And and then in addition to that, you're gonna do some stuff outdoors. I'm surprised more gyms aren't doing that. I know there's the
Well, I
whole kind
got
of
this
social
idea. Well, I'm not going to call this person out by name because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I got this idea from another trainer who was like, yeah, we're still running workouts outside because that's okay based on the guidance that was given, because people can go to parks, they can go to the beach. I don't know how my parking lot's any different than that. So we're going to do it today because people are dying for social interaction. So we're going to
Yeah,
give it to them. Just stay 6 feet away from each other and be outside. It's fine.
yeah, no, I think that's kind of a cool idea. I mean, if I had a box, depending on what the rules were, yeah, maybe you find some outdoor space, you limit the class to 6 or even 8, and instead of having 3 evening, you might have to have more classes, and you might have to limit it to, hey, you can only come 2 days this week, but there's certainly potential there. And they could even, with that being said, you could have you have to keep the equipment in mind, but you can bring a few kettlebells outside or a few dumbbells or
Well, we
even a
told,
barbell.
because we gave everything away. So we told everybody, I'm like, bring what you got. The point is not that we have this incredibly well programmed workout. The point is like to get with other people, safely, and get some social interaction while practicing social distancing. So, social distancing doesn't necessarily mean isolation. I think there's a little bit of confusion about that, so
Yeah, so
safely, right? Like,
they they kind of say like, hey, if you don't have corona, you should be practicing social distancing. If you have it, you're isolating. And
you
there
should
is
be
a
isolated.
difference, right?
100%.
There's a
There's
difference
there's a
between
very
those two
big
things.
difference. So
So,
those 2 things, and then putting together this program that we're gonna try to over deliver. So think of it like this. I want to give 3 to 500% value in this time frame, so that people are like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to keep this because you're still providing me all of the value minus the space. Because again, it's not about the space. If people are only paying you to get access to your space, then you need to listen to every podcast that we've ever done from 1 until 207, because that's not what people should pay for. If you suck so bad at service that everybody just jumps ship, you should just run 24-hour open gym and reduce your overhead in coaching.
yeah, have less of a headache too. So,
Yeah,
you know, you mentioned the cards, but give me one more thing before we sign off. That's like, hey, if you're a box owner and you can't be doing these outdoor classes for, the rules in your town, or you just don't feel comfortable doing that, rather than only focusing on this push towards online, what else can they be doing to prepare themselves for June 11th or whenever their box is going to reopen?
you should look at all of your systems and procedures in your gym, revamp everything that needs to be revamped, as well as like going through your gym, be like, hey, what's broken and needs to be fixed right now? So you're not going to get this 2 month or this 45-day window again where your gym is just shut down. So don't look at it as like, okay, this really sucks. Yes, it does suck. Now move past that. What can I do that would be productive in this time frame? You need to create. Great. You got 12 hours a day to produce content. So get to it. You need to replace the stuff in the bathrooms, get a wrench, get your ass to work. You need to start touching base with people that you haven't talked to in a while, or start putting together some email campaigns. Get your fingers warmed up and start jamming on the computer. There's so much shit that can be done that people are always complaining that they don't have time to do. Well, do it now. Like, don't be woe is me. I was reading something the other day. It was like, hey, listen, your self-pity is not helping you, and it makes you annoying to be around. So don't be that
Hmm.
guy or gal.
Absolutely. All right. Well, how about we talk about front rack mobility next time?
Done.
We do have a lot to talk about with that, from, how do you improve it to do you even need to improve it? So we'll chat about all that. Any last words about what's going on out there? Who knows? By the next time we record, we can be in a completely new set of circumstances.
Yeah, either the world will have ended or they'll have lifted the ban. Who knows? But I don't think there's any bad ideas out there. I think you should be trying everything. I don't think like there's no right answer for everybody. You should evaluate it and be like, can I do that? And then what would my members find valuable? And then go full steam ahead with that, with the end in mind. Not just like, hey, how do I patch this? To use JP's analogies, like it's not just about like this little hole in your boat. Like it's about what do I need to do moving forward after this?
And I like the little Stephen Covey reference. So, you know, begin with the end in mind. I like it. So let's wrap it up. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, certainly hit us up, email us, best hour of
Or
their
if you just
day.
hate me for my opinions, you can put
Yeah.
those in there too.
If you hate Fern, just email him directly. I don't need to sift through all those
you're
emails.
you're Switzerland, right? Like you're neutral. You don't like to rub anybody the wrong way, you know?
No, I don't mind rubbing people the wrong way. Going back to our chat on open-mindedness, like at first, all of my information was just coming from A, fear, B, social media, and C, whatever. I don't really watch like regular television, so I don't ever see the
I
news.
don't either. Yeah.
So, it's kind of just what I'm hearing. I'm like, this is stupid. And my mom, who sends me like every bad news article only, right? Who also sent me a
By the
mask.
way, they're in New York, so I mean, are they okay?
No, they're in
Are they?
Florida.
They're in Florida. Oh, that's right. They live. That's right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're,
Okay.
I'm concerned for them. They're older. They're the population that would get sick.
My
But they're
parents are
being
too. Like I was concerned about my parents.
Yeah, but they're being smart about it. Plus, my mom is like so stubborn; she would never die. So
My parents just been sitting out on the pool by the pool for the past week.
yeah, so I'm not super informed. And again, I I do believe the opposite of you on some of these topics, but I'm open enough to be like, hey, you're not completely wrong on it. But we've already talked long enough. If you want to ask me questions next time, we can do that.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
And I could be wrong, right? Just like anybody could be wrong if you plopped them up and put them somewhere else. Like just because I could be right or wrong here doesn't mean that exact same idea can't be right or wrong somewhere else. So I
uh,
think just context.
agreed. But what I was going to say is, please, if you haven't already, I have two favors to ask of the listeners. Leave us a review on iTunes. We've gotten tremendous feedback. We've got over 160 reviews now. But the more reviews we get, the easier it is to share this podcast, and the easier it is to get great
Can we get
guests.
200 reviews for 200 podcasts? Can we just get that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the fact that we've pumped out 200 podcasts in 1 year
1 year.
is overlooked, and it should be something that CrossFit.com talks more about. But we've got some great podcasts that have just happened. JP's podcast was great. We had Mark Bell on recently. Fern's had some great people. I mean, don't overlook someone like John Briggs, a big deal in this community. And we've got some upcoming special ones that I don't want to announce yet because I'm not 100% sure they're going to happen, but we've got some big ones coming up. But check out our Instagram as well, at Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, please watch the episodes of dropping in. We've spent a lot of money on that, and Best Hour of Their Day is just a small little company. So we hope you
And
enjoy
tested
it.
our fitness. Yeah.
And
So
yeah, so check those out, and please share them with your friends and family. And while you're down in this quarantine, you got nothing else to do. All right, Fern. We'll talk next time about front rack mobility.
hopefully.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcast. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day, and thanks again to our special guest. We appreciate all you guys do for us with Best Hour of Their Day when it comes to sharing our posts on Instagram, when it comes to subscribing to us on YouTube, when it comes to the constant feedback. We are grateful and we appreciate it. We are trying to build a community based on coaching development and becoming the best version of yourself. And it goes without saying that we couldn't do without all of you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Season 1 of Dropping In is out. We are getting tremendous feedback and we'd love for you to check it out. Leave us a comment on there. Head over to our Instagram. Give us a follow. Like our pictures. Feel free to share anything that resonates with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for us, please don't hesitate. Email us besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. Thanks again. Until the next episode, we hope you've had the best hour of your day.